In this video, I'll demonstrate some approaches to creating 2D backdrops for games in Unity. Now, I've got a scene that's built with a very simple camera controller so I can look around. I have a terrain object, and I want to add some backdrops outside the bounds of the terrain. I'll start by creating a cylinder that I'll use to hold 2D artwork. I'm scaling it up to make it wrap around the entire scene. And I'll use ProBuilder, which you can download from the asset store, to make a couple of changes to this geometry once I have it in place. I'll assign a material and put a transparent texture on the material so I can see this as I make changes to it. I have a mountain skyline. And you can see that it starts opaque, so I need to change the shader to allow transparency. It's also visible only from the outside. If I look on the inside of the cylinder, I won't see anything. If I look from the outside, I'll only see the material represented on one side of the object. Now I'll open ProBuilder. The ProBuilder window will bring up a bunch of options, but you can see most of the interesting options for modifying this geometry are grayed out. So I need to ProBuilderize using the ProBuilderize button. And that converts the object into editable geometry. Then flip the normals so that the surface faces inward instead of outward. Now you can see that I still have texture showing on the top and bottom because it does have faces facing inward on the top and bottom of the cylinder. So I'll switch my selection mode to face and select and then grow the selection, detach, and delete. So I've removed the top cap of the cylinder. I'll do the same on the bottom. Again, select a face, grow the selection to match the entire bottom cap, detach, and delete. Now I have a cylinder with no caps. There's a little bit of a fuzzy border on the top, and I'll see that when I play. If I look up, you can see that little bit of an edge up there. So to place the texture properly, I need to open the UV editor and take a look at how this is laid out in reference to the image. I can scale the entire UV layout, and that will take it away from the edges, and you can see, I'll get that window out of the way. You'll see that that blurry edge from the top goes away if I move it all down. I can also select by UV point, by vertex basically, and move those around to rescale the texture placement. I'll get that looking about how I want it and check it out in the gameplay view. And that's looking all right. The contrast is a little bit low, so I'm going to change the texture, the shader type, to unlit transparent. That means lighting is not going to affect the final output of color from the textures. So it'll be more like straight transfer of the photograph into the scene. Now I've duplicated this object, so I'll make another ring of mountains outside. The first ring, offset it a little so it doesn't look like a copy of the same mountains. And spin it around so they don't quite match up. Now the depth sorting is not quite right with this shader, so I'm going to change this over to unlit and transparent cutout. And that gets the depth sorting looking a little better. There's still sort of a fuzzy alpha edge on the shader, but it doesn't look too bad in the game view. Now as I move around, you can see a little bit of parallax between the foreground and background mountains. I want to create another copy of this cylinder and put a city skyline on it. I'll try it between the two sets of mountains and see if that looks interesting. I'm duplicating the shader so that I can apply a different texture and drag the city skyline image right onto the input image. Now the UVs don't look quite right, so I need to do some UV editing. That made the texture swap. I think I just need to close this window and reapply the texture to make sure that it looks right. Okay, so that's looking a little bit better. The buildings look a little stretched out, so I'll edit the UVs just a bit more. This time by changing the tiling on the shader itself. It looks right. And we'll see what this looks like in the game. I think instead I'll move the buildings inside the ring of mountains and move it down so that it seems like a closer city. Now all of these are a bit close to the camera to begin with, so it feels a little bit flat. Depending on the game you're making and the style that you want, that may be appropriate. If I wanted this to look realistic, I think I would go with much larger distance between the game camera and the background placements. So I'm going to drag another sprite right into the scene and animate it just to show that you can also animate sprites and background textures. Now I'm scaling this to make it a little bit more visible from the right depth. It's not a realistic scale, but that doesn't matter so much right now. And I'll create a new empty game object to hold this sprite and then rotate it around the center of the scene. From the empty game object, I want to go to the animation window and create a new animation. Now I'll add a property. I'm going to use rotation on the transform. Now I have some keyframes, and I'll name the object first, and then move the end keyframe to a later time so the animation plays for a bit longer. I want to set the end rotation value to 360 and look at the curve view and make these linear tangents so that the animation will play at a constant speed and loop while at the end. Now the airplane looks a little too big, so I think I'll move it around. If I select it directly and not the parent object, I can move it and scale it, and that doesn't affect the animation because the animation is on the parent game object. Looks like I got the value wrong at the end of this though, so I'll fix that. Again, 360 degrees, minus because it's going around counterclockwise. And now I have 2D backgrounds with a 2D sprite animated in the scene.